Well, I hope some more people will come, but let's use the opportunity to have a free and frank exchange. I'd like to welcome you. I'm Piotr Lovitt, Executive Director of PASOS, which is a network of think tanks in Central and Eastern Europe. The entrance is some brochures which tell you a bit more about PASOS and its members. One of the areas that we have worked is visa policy. We have a number of projects in the past. One was on the Western Balkans, which is obviously in a very different situation now, and another in the Eastern Partnership. And our partners in Ukraine for that were Europe Without Barriers, who I think recognizes certainly the leading experts in Ukraine on visa policies and also on the experience of visa applications. So I'm very happy that we have with us colleagues from Europe Without Barriers, Oleksandr Sushko and Iryna Sushko. In addition, we have one of the experts who's worked with us on a number of visa projects, Piotr Kazmierkiewicz of the Institute of Public Affairs in Poland, and we do have a PASOS publication authored by Piotr, which is also available, which is The Road to an Open Europe, which is looking at how to influence EU policymaking in the region of visas and migration. And I'm also very happy that we have from the Ministry of Interior, Andrea Vilímová, from the Asylum and Migration Unit. Yeah. Which is important because we'll be looking at how the Czech Republic looks and handles visa applications, but also a kind of two-stream, which is both the overall politics towards visa liberalization, but also what it means case by case. And we were also hoping somebody from the Minister of Foreign Affairs would be here. Maybe somebody is?
I am.
You are, great. Okay. So from that point of view, I think we've got the right target people in the room. But as you see, we also have an interesting exhibition, which our guests will explain the kind of stories of people who've been applying for visas, and I think it's quite surprising to see some of the actual categories of people who have not been successful in applying for visas. So I'd like Oleksandr to start with his presentation. Do you want to do it as a PowerPoint or not?
There is no, we will not go over. I ask Iryna to start. Okay. Thank you, first of all, for this opportunity to speak here. We're trying to have to provide an independent expertise to the issue of in the broader terms, the issues of the freedom of movement in Europe. In the narrow terms, it is about the visa policies. We consider that today there is a certain challenge to the legitimate travelers to use fully their rights to travel. They have so what we really have today is, first of all, in Europe, since the collapse of communism, we had a so-called border revolution, after which we have Europe without administrative borders, without physical checks at the border, and hundreds of millions of people may enjoy this free movement area. And that's a very positive development which brought very new reality into Europe. On the other hand, we still have hundreds of millions of people again outside of this area, and some of these people, many millions of people, still need visas to travel to the Schengen area, and for sure that creates a barrier. Many people feel and felt difficulties, different kind of difficulties, and just to illustrate these difficulties, we brought this number of personal stories of very famous individuals in Ukraine, academicians, sportsmen, writers, musicians, scientists who face serious difficulties to get visas. And these particular stories demonstrate us that something is wrong in this kind of policies and something should be changed or improved. There is a very positive political trend in Europe which goes from the national borders to the visa-free area to border-free area. We also are part of this process. We are closely monitoring all these policies connected to visa facilitation, first since 2008. Then visa liberalization process, which was a success for the Western Balkans countries just recently, and which is today on the table for Eastern Partnership countries. We are strongly welcoming all the efforts by the EU member states to make the visa-free Europe closer. And this is an objective of our NGO. We have established it some years ago in order to combine political research and political advocacy, in order to provide you with reliable analytical data, and on the other hand to give practical arguments why we need to go ahead as fast as possible towards the reality which we have, which we call visa-free Europe. So we consider this objective realistic, regardless of the obvious challenges which we face, including migratory challenges, border challenges. We fully understand the legitimate concerns of the member states regarding the fighting illegal migration, fighting international crime. At the same time, we argue for such a vision that visa policy is rather archaic instrument which does not give to the particular countries an efficient tool to really combat all these challenges. And what we really try to do is to provide a way and to provide a channels to communicate between different stakeholders who are involved into the processes of visa liberalization in order to make this process viable, real, visible. We also try to provide as much as possible transparency into existing migration and visa policies of all the countries concerned. First of all, starting from our own home countries. We were strongly in favor of liberalization of migration and visa policies by Ukraine, and today we consider this as a success story, as Ukraine is a very open country which has either multilaterally or bilaterally or unilaterally visa-free regime for almost all the European countries, including EU member states and non-EU countries. So, that give us, and also we encourage all the steps by the EU envisaging the better people-to-people contacts. So here we just would like to share with you our vision of the specifics of Czech Republic, first of all, and the general overview as we see this. First of all, there is a real first of all, it's really important for us to analyze and to give a proper interpretation of the facts, which we can get either from the official statistics or from the research. Because our organization, for many years, first of all, we study what we have available from the official sources of the EU and the member states in terms of traveling, migration, crossing borders, issuing visas. On the other hand, we provide our own monitoring, which is based on the polling of those people who are applying for visas, those people who are traveling abroad, those people who are facing these procedures to get visas. We ask them about their own assessment of procedures, of requirements, of rules. And so, as a result, we have this quite complex picture of the reality. And just to share some interesting data with you, I want to refer to some figures which may be really interesting for here being in Prague, in the Czech Republic. For us, it was a big surprise that on one hand we have very visible increase of a number of people traveling from our country, for example, to the EU. In terms of the general figures, we have every year about 15% of increase of those who get in visas to travel to the EU. So last year it was 16% of the growth of those who got Schengen visas in Ukraine. And if we compare this data with the national data of the Czech Republic, we have a bit strange and different picture, which we tried to comment or to understand. We approached to the Czech Republic embassy in Ukraine, we consulted to the experts, and we have very different opinion. Maybe you will have a reason to comment, but what do I mean? Is that during last several years, we have very visible, continuous, persistent decline of the number of those who are getting visas in the consulates of the Czech Republic in Ukraine. So, especially last year, in 2012, the figures showed us drop, almost 30% of drop in comparison of 2011. In 2012, 74,000 visas, while a year before it was 103,000. And in 2010 it was 110,000. So practically we have last 3 years continuous decline, which is very much different from the rest of the Schengen states. I can compare it to many countries, but sometimes we have small growth, sometimes we have very fast growth, like vis-a-vis Spain, for example, or Baltic countries. But here there is a unique case when we have a continuous decline. And there is no clear explanation of that. Another point of interest, which may be called the point of concern, is very low percentage of the visas for multiple entries. While generally in the EU we have about 30 to 35% of the visas for multiple entries, in the case of the Czech Republic we have just 7% generally in the world and 8% in Ukraine. We consider this rather strange because it's very different even from those countries who usually are considered to be very tough and strong in terms of visa policy, like Belgium or Netherlands or Italy. So it's a kind of surprise. When we asked to the officials in the consulate why it happened, the explanation was the main point of explanation was that the most of the visitors are tourists. That is why they do not need multiple entry visas. But there are a lot of the EU member states where the biggest part of these visitors are tourists. At the same time, there is no one other country with a percentage of the multiple entry visas lower than 15%. Czech Republic is 8%, as I said. So, surprise, especially if we compare this figure with other Visegrad Group countries and with other Central and Eastern Europe countries. So these are 2 points which make us make reasonable to say that the case of Czech Republic is quite specific. Maybe there are some reasons for that. But the overall picture shows us that in terms of the number of visitors from Ukraine to Czech Republic, there is a positive dynamic. But by the number of visas, there is a decline. What does it mean? It means that many people try to get visas from other Schengen countries to travel to the Czech Republic. A lot of people use any available opportunities to avoid contacts with the consulates of the Czech Republic. So that's my interpretation, maybe I'm wrong. So we have lots of people coming, but less and less people coming to the consulates. For sure that's creates a certain kind of perception. Perception which sometimes we have these debates with the consuls who said us that is, you are creating bad perception of us. It's not true. We use only this official data and we ask for interpretation how this reality may be explained. Maybe there are some more reasonable explanations. But people ask us, and these people, because we are contacted by the number of people who consider us as those who may defend their interests. We are known as an NGO dealing with this problem, so it was hundreds of people contacting us. And they are also asking us what to do when this situation happens. So I think that there is a reason when we are just translators of certain perception. We are not just creating this perception in order to complain or in order to blame somebody. But here there is a question to raise. And I think that maybe Iryna would add something for that, but this is my general message that yes, we are on the right political track, which gives us a chance to remove visas from our agenda. It may happen, maybe in 3 years, maybe in 5, maybe in 10 years, but it will definitely happen. But on the way to this objective, we need to make this process as much as transparent as possible. And what we do domestically, we're advocating for reforms needed. Maybe this agenda of visa liberalization, what we need to do in terms of document security, in terms of border protection, in terms of migration management, in terms of human rights, lots of things. So that is what we are doing at home. We try to monitor all the legislation, the policies, etc. And we believe that that will be a fair policy which definitely leads us to the objective of that we travel within reasonable time. But here we are here just to deliver a bit specific vision, questions which we are usually asked when some people come to us after contacts with the consulates, when they face certain problems, when they face difficulties, and when they just want to travel legitimately. If traveling to the Czech Republic, there is no need to go to the consulate of Slovakia or Poland and just to manipulate with the Schengen legislation in order to go to Prague, but with visa of another country. So, but there is a certain problem, and I would encourage you, if possible, to comment this particular fact, which helps us to explain our clients, our society, and our country, what's going on in this politics, in this policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, our co-organizer, PASOS, for giving us the possibility to be here today, because visa issues and visa practice is a very sensitive and burning issues for Ukrainian citizens. For instance, 77% of Ukrainians never been abroad. This figure is easily explained, I think, not only by a lack of money from individuals, but first of all, because of very strict visa requirements. This trend is, I think, dangerous enough, because we think that immobility of citizens makes them particularly vulnerable to manipulation, including, for example, the authorities, and is a ground for manipulation, for stereotypes, and I think a person who has never been to more successful countries are less likely to seek ways to change your life or life in the country, for example. And now there is no simple answer to the question concerning time limits when citizens of Eastern Partnership countries, particularly Ukraine, will start enjoying free travel within Europe. Visa regime, which is rather complicated in many cases, will be still hampering human contacts for a while. It will also serve as an obvious factor of, I think, division of Europe. And such a situation does not benefit to optimistic outlooks. It also causes natural disappointment within Ukrainian society, and such disappointment has been accumulating over the last years. At the same time, yes, now we have visa facilitation agreement that Ukraine was granted 2008. That was the first time, that was a first step in the right direction, but it has not managed to compensate all negative outcomes, significant changes in the Eastern Europe over the last year. Because under our independent monitoring, we think that consular missions should more actively apply the existing flexibility of Schengen legislation in order to issue a large number of multiple entry and long-term visas. We notice that consulates and visa centers, that is provider centers, should inform the applicants about their rights to obtain long-term visas and offer such visas to those who meet the criteria, even if the person does not apply for such a visa. Because we believe that long-term visas valid for a minimum of 1 year should become the usual norm, not the exception, as it follows from the existing Schengen regulation as the EU visa code or visa facilitation agreement. We do think that issuing of short-term and multiple visas can promote ground for development of huge economic opportunities for EU business and tourist industries, and that is That is why we believe that the EU countries, particularly Czech Republic, can support our efforts in the way of visa liberalization. Thank you. I will be ready to answer your question if you will have.
Should we go first before we come to some questions to our other panelists? And I think Piotr, coming from another EU member state, also you have an overview of I think the whole EU policy towards the Eastern Partnership.
I'm very happy to be here in the country that the 21st December 2007 underwent a revolution, becoming a country that is surrounded by other EU member states and having no longer any external border controls. I remember the times in the 1990s when I was a student at Central European University, which was called in such a grand way. It was supposed to realize this dream of unity of Central Europe, but in order to cross from Poland into Hungary, you needed to go through 3 border controls. Slovak-Hungarian, Slovak-Czech, and Polish-Czech. And I remember when you looked at the statistics right before Schengen, you know what was the nationality of the people who were found to be breaking the border regime most often in Poland? The Czechs. Okay, the largest number. Because of the nature of the border. It's very easy to cross the Sudeten, land illegally, find on the other side. Now, I'm bringing these personal examples because now I came, on a train, 9 hours you are here from Warsaw, same for Berlin, and you just don't have any borders. And that's how we are actually building Central Europe. In my recent paper, I argued that we tend to forget in the EU what success Central European enlargement was, starting from East Germany, through Czech Republic, Slovakia, Poland. I remember the times when the Czech Republic was really concerned if Slovakia stayed outside of Schengen enlargement, that you would have to build a big border between the countries that used to be one state. Now we often fail to realize that it was much easier to travel from Lemberg, or Lviv now, before 1914 than it is now. People didn't need any passports to go to Venice, to go to Berlin, to go to Paris. And now we have a new divide. And this divide is particularly striking because if you try to cross the border from Hungary or from Poland into Ukraine, you see how poor the infrastructure is, how difficult it is to cross this border. That's why in this most recent paper, I'm calling on the EU to delink visas and migration control. And there are reasons which are particularly appealing to us as EU member states. Now, Oleksandr just gave the very good example. Czech Republic might decide not to issue visas to certain individuals, but they would be able to get them from other member states. What is really ironic now is that the countries that issue the largest number of visas to Ukrainians are not finding Ukrainians to be a problem in terms of illegal migration. Very good case is Poland or Hungary. These are not the countries you would hear as opposing visa liberalization with Ukraine, and they would be the ones who would be facing the largest influx anyhow. Why? Because Ukrainians are filling the economic gap, there are cross-border contacts and so on. I realized that for Czech Republic versus Russia is the key partner for tourism, for investment and so on. And I believe the Czech Republic will not mind liberalization of visa movement with Russia. Now, when I started by using the example of Central Europe, I also wanted to show that it is possible to achieve progress in fighting illegal migration without using this stick and carrot policy with visas. I mean, does anybody remember when the Czechs got visa-free movement to the EU? Early 90s. Before even having any accession talks, at the same time when readmission agreement was signed, What I remember very clearly is that in those days, nobody was considering Czechs or Poles or Slovaks as any kind of migration threat, not in terms of the policy debate in the EU. Yet the threat was there. I mean, since 2004 we had a large outflux from Central Europe, but it's not debated in these terms. I'm arguing that the issue is primarily political, and that the approach the EU has taken is wrong, and it's particularly hurting the new EU member states. I'll give the example. Okay, both Czech Republic and Poland are countries which have a tradition of human rights-oriented foreign policy. This is very clear in Czech policy towards Belarus. It is very clear in our actions regarding the Yulia Tymoshenko case. And the question is, should we mix the visa policy and the democratization policy? Because while we are so concerned about human rights, we also have very strong interests in the neighborhood. And we have a conflict. I'm arguing that if we stick to the very strong requirements on transformation of the Ukrainian administration, because the second stage visa liberalization is really not as much about technical standards. It is about the good governance, the human rights, the judiciary, all these things that these countries are clearly not able and at times not willing to comply with. And for that reason, I'm quite skeptical about chances of Ukraine, frankly speaking, in the midterm, in meeting these requirements. And I'm basing this on the most recent example from Western Balkans and from Romania and Bulgaria, where these countries were able to meet technical criteria, but a number of EU member states were able to say these countries are still not up to standards with these very hard to define questions of fighting corruption, judiciary and so on. We as NGOs could of course point to hypocrisy or double standards. I mean, is Italy doing better on fighting corruption? Is Cyprus doing better on transparency? Okay, but the fact is that the standards have shifted. It is much more difficult for the new waves of applicants for visa liberalization to meet the standards. One of the reasons is that because the standards have become explicit. Because the EU knows it has been able to get the consensus among EU member states how to define those. They were not as defined in our times when we were joining. But I'm just pointing to this dilemma which our diplomacies and our Ministry of the Interior are facing. How to balance our interests in the neighborhood with our commitment to human rights. And my answer is to lobby for decoupling these two issues. Poland is a very good example, and I was also quoting Finland as a very good example of being able to open the territory to migrants from countries such as Russia. Very good example of Kaliningrad, which has been a success. It's the largest local border traffic area, covering 3 million people, big cities like Gdańsk and Kaliningrad, with a country which is clearly having problems with democracy and human rights, and Poland and Finland are one of the countries which are crying out loud on that. And yet we recognize that for the local communities of St. Petersburg, of eastern Finland, of Kaliningrad, of northern Poland, this is fundamental development priority. And so it was quite interesting that the countries bordering the Russian Federation were asking the Commission to actually be able to open up. And they separated the issues of human rights from the issues of regional development. Now, the problem is that Eastern Partnership, by the way, Polish, Swedish and Czech initiative, again, initiative that was supposed to promote human rights, is getting into a deadlock. Ironically speaking, it would be easiest, to my mind, to open up to countries such as Azerbaijan or Belarus, countries which have very strong controls of its own citizens, countries which introduce very strong migration controls. But then again, that would go against the original objective, that liberalizing the movement is promoting democracy. But I think we have to really redefine the meaning of what we want to achieve through visa liberalization. Are we trying to get the administrations to believe the things we do? Because that's what the agenda looks like. Let the border guards become like our border guards. Let the judges be brought up to the level of West European judges. Since this is not realistic in the short to mid-term, I suggest that the EU, and maybe us, should look for pilot projects, should look for initiatives which show that it is possible to control locally the movement, and then see what kind of effect that's going to have on the population. I'm coming also from a bit different perspective than my Ukrainian colleagues, and I respect their perspective, but I also expect that their work will also consist in trying to tell us how things are really going forward in Ukraine. I think one of the problems we have in the EU is in getting actual picture of the progress. When Poland and Czech Republic were acceding to the EU, we had a very strong monitoring and conditionality process. We had very frequent reports. We had a clear oversight. I think there is, at least in Poland, which is still very supportive of the Eastern Partnership Initiative, a bit of fatigue, a bit of also frustration over how much are we getting from the partners. And I think we also could ask our colleagues from civil society sector in Eastern Partnership to be forthcoming and tell us what the difficulties are, where there is need for greater assistance. And that's my final closing statement. One of the problems we have is that we are too quick in the EU to blame the administrations of these countries of ill will. We are too quick to say that they are trying to frustrate the progress. I think the reason why there is so little progress in the East is often inability to meet the requirements, lack of the tools, conceptual tools, how to achieve these reforms. In fact, if the visa liberalization were to work, we would need more conditionality and at the same time more training, more setting of the standards. But since I don't see this forthcoming in the current crisis, my idea is let's try to separate the very ambitious agenda of transformation of these countries from the very technical issue of visa policy. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I think we've kind of got two areas of discussion. One is the kind of broader political debates, which even the delinkage, which you're referring to, and then of course there's how it is now in terms of practicalities. So I mean, I know from the Ministry of Interior you can't answer all the questions, but it'd also be interesting, Andrea, how much the statistics which were raised by Oleksandr are new to you.
Sorry. Just to make things clear, the Ministry of Interior is responsible for the long-term visas and long-term residence and permanent residence permits. It's us, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who is in charge of the Schengen issues and who is instructing the consulates and embassies in this regard. So I presume most of the questions were targeted to us, not to the Ministry of Interior. They might have some numbers of like asylum maybe, or not even that. So I might maybe have a little information for you in this regard.
Okay. So do you want to respond a little bit? Yeah.
So it's me. I'm from the Department of Consular Reception and Methodology, who is in charge in issuing visas and instructing the consulates and in charge of Schengen acquis and the ministry. There is my colleague from the political department, Mr. Eckert, he came from my colleagues. So there's two of us for the two nations. Being a methodology person in the ministry, telling the consulates on how to issue visas and how to understand the visa, the process of issuing visas. It needs to be clear for us that we have certain rules to follow, which of course is the visa agreement. of harmonization on the local Schengen level. That means in Ukraine we should have a harmonized approach to solve the application, to decide on these applications. I'm sure you know that the visa code is just going on the process of its revision. You as an NGO had also a chance to contribute, or as there's a public debate going on, and you can be a part of it by sending your ideas and suggestions to the Commission. We also published the link on our website. So we understand that, especially in the touchy issues that you were mentioning, which are the multiple visas for the purpose of tourism that are not included in the visa code. We understand that this needs to be changed, and this is going to be our main point of the discussion at the beginning of June within the visa committee. And I'm sure we're not going to be the only one who's going to raise this question in there. We are trying to facilitate as much as we can. And I would really like to know, what do you think the reasons of the decline in the visa number during last year at the consulates in Ukraine is? Because we do register a decline in the number of applications, and of course resulting in the decline in the number of visas issued. But that only at the consulate in Lviv, not in Kiev, not in Donetsk. The big reason for us, or one of the biggest reasons for us, is also opening the Polish consulate in Lviv, the new one, and the Polish national policy of shopping visas, or the facilitation of the facilitation process. By chance, I was a member of the Schengen evaluation group in January at the Polish and Slovak consulates in Ukraine, in Lviv and Moshura. And we had a chance to see how these, because Slovakia and Poland both have national instructions on issuing visas, which are actually against the common visa policy, because they enable to issue visas with almost no supportive documents and stuff like that. That is why a huge number of applicants go to Poland. It's not good, it's not right, I know, but it's a fact that we can only hardly influence. In regards to the multiple entry visa as the purpose of tourism, I don't want to call it a national instruction, but we also introduced, or we are just introducing a new rule about that enables in certain cases to issue multiple visa with the purpose of tourism on condition that the people used already previously a Schengen visa, proved that they were issued a Schengen visa, used it correctly, and we can be issued Schengen visas with multiple entries with a longer validity. That is the current instruction that we have in Russia from January, and we are introducing now in Ukraine too. In regards to the multiple visas again, you said, and that was a correct information, that most of our applicants are tourists that do not even apply for a multiple visa. So we cannot even, processing the application, we are not, giving the multiple visas because they are not applying for this. And you know that from the visa code that it has to be justified the intention of traveling or of repeated travel, which is not there in 70% of the application that are submitted through the accredited travel agents, right? 66. Otherwise, in cases, and I have here the numbers from our consulates, in cases where there were multiple visas applied, almost, well, the average, we have 3 offices, Kiev, Lviv, and Donetsk. It's more than 90% cases issued. In Kiev, 97.6, in Donetsk, it's 98.4. So when they apply, they get it, basically. Okay. And my last comment would be, and and you know because you are in touch with our consulate in Kiev, right? You were talking about explaining the official sources, like the statistics of the Commission, and we have a problem there because the number differs. Okay, we were trying so many times. Oh, okay, at least 3 times since we have the visa code in process. Because the methodology of the visa statistics counted by the Commission is not right. We are giving them the numbers, but all the numbers they want is the application submitted and visa issued. And the difference between that is the rejection rate, which is very, very high compared to our actual numbers. But to these visas that are to the differential number, they also count the application that were not finished at all for some reason. There are so many people that just apply and never come to pick the passport and the visas are not issued. Or the application that are not finished within the time that, because we are all sending the statistics in January, and we still might have like 1,500 applicants that are not decided and are rented after all. But I'm sure that people are discussing this with our consulate, so I would kindly request to double check or to verify or to communicate about these even official numbers with our statistics, with us, or with the consulate.
Can I just comment? Because I believe that these national instructions predated the visa code, right?
No.
They were not.
The Polish shopping visa is an instruction that is 1.5 years old. We have the visa code since April 2010. The Slovak instructions dates back to December.
Because I believe that the Polish instruction hasn't really changed that much. That policy, because if you look at the consular reports, Poland, they state that. And I remember the times when we were joining Schengen. Then yes, there were, for instance, ambassadors from other Schengen countries, and the Polish MFA just begged to differ. Let's put it this way.
It's definitely younger than Schengen.
I'm saying about the policy itself. It might have been later formulated, but
I was in Lovitt. There is an external service providers, the outsourcing center, and they have it just really clearly on the board that it's enough when you just give to your application a bill from the Polish shop and you receive the visa. This is not how that should work. Of course, in that case, there is a huge gap for visa shopping, and we really would like that to be avoided. We'll see how the Schengen evaluation process will go on. But at the same time, we are aware of this problem, and we are trying to, and it's not definitely not just the Czech Republic, because the multiple entry visas with the purpose of touristic is a problem to a lot of countries. And not Schengen countries, and for example Ukraine, but others that we are not even, that close in touch with.
But I mean, in Moldova, there's been the one-stop shop for quite a while.
Yeah.
But what you are saying is it means that our dream of Visegrad cooperation in consular offices is going to be a long road. Okay.
But it's, of course, so that's why I'm asking, what particular reasons do you think are those because of that people do not come to the Czech embassy? Because Kiev itself is not limiting the number of applicants even for the travel agents, and the creating of a harmonized list of supporting documents has come up to the last stage. It was about to be approved in the last visa committee meeting, but wasn't. So it would also help us if you have some more information that we do. We forward it to the right places.
Just briefly respond. Yes, what is really important for us, and here we have clarified our data, which we deliver to the mass media, that the refusal rate is not the same as not issued line. So that not issued, not necessarily refused. And now we are quite clear about this, and because that was the main complaint from the consulate when we said this data, and they said
of course, because
But in terms of, yes, in terms of general number, there was no big discrepancies in statistics, maybe some hundreds of visas. But just one comment on the general number in 3 consulates in Ukraine. Yes, you are right that in Lviv there was the most obvious decrease of number, but in Kiev and Donetsk there was also certain decline.
You know what? If you're talking about the last 3 years, there was one more thing that is, I think, 3 years old. We had our consulate in Lviv was closed, and I think it was 2009 for almost 5 months or something like that. So all the visa applications were processed in Kiev, and that's why the number of the applications just rose. And then it got back, and we had a huge increase in Lviv that it got really go again. So I'm sorry to say this, and I'm not talking myself out of the problem, but we had, like, ups and downs, and it's not just because of the will of the applicants to go there or there.
Yes,
But I know that the opening of the Lviv consulate of the Polish colleagues, it cost us.
maybe
A few years ago, we did a study of practices in Visegrad countries, and we did interviews with the consuls in Kiev, Lviv, and Odessa. And I believe in Kiev there is much better coordination between embassies. Okay, they meet and they coordinate policy. Let's put it this way. Whereas in Lviv, maybe it's not as good.
Yeah, it's a bit unfortunate because in Lviv there is just Polish and us.
Yeah.
In Donetsk, it's just us. So it's a bit difficult.
I must also admit that we found a lot of times that Polish MFA wasn't really responding to the other Visegrad countries' criticisms or suggestions, kind of seeing this as its own national policy. It's even called, Eastern Consular Policy. It's part of foreign policy. And so it's very difficult, perhaps, even for us in Warsaw as civil society to influence. It's not easy.
One of the problems we also face in Kiev, and I think my colleague can talk about that for a long time, is that it's very difficult with the Ukrainians to discuss the premises of our new consulate or new building. It's the discussion has been going on for 7-8 years, and we are nowhere. It's not the main reason of the reason, but it's a big problem for us too. So, but we're trying to anyway somehow.
I just want to say for general picture why this is so important nationally for the Czech Republic, because if you take all these visas issued by Czech Republic in Russia, in Ukraine, in other Eastern Partnership countries, it means almost 90% of all visas issued by Czech Republic in the world. So that is why if we one day drop visas for the Eastern European countries, it means 90% of Czech visa
Our
policy.
budget will drop.
Yes.
Our budget will drop.
Yeah, so
No, it's true.
that's
It's
very
true.
important.
The highest number of the Schengen visa we have in Russia, which comes almost 350,000 a year, out of the 500,000 we have, of 600,000 actually. So by Ukraine, which is almost 100,000.
Totally, it is more than 80%.
And if we become the Eastern Partnership, you're absolutely right.
And then, Andrea, if you could.
Well, I think my colleague told everything, so I don't want to add. And I think that also the topic is quite strongly connected with international relations. I think it's
I mean, are there any particular issues facing the ministry in terms of the asylum and migration, which issues particularly problematic in the case of Ukraine?
I think that right now I cannot answer because I'm for a really short time.
Sure.
Just tell you in these terms, it's very important that generally Ukraine is not among top countries sending asylum seekers to the EU. At least it is not even among top 30. So it's quite low. But in the Czech Republic,
It's the migration question.
I mean asylum, particularly asylum seekers. So totally for the EU, it is not an issue because Ukraine is somewhere very low. But for the Czech Republic, there is an issue because about 60% of all asylum applications in the EU from Ukraine is here in the Czech Republic. So,
and they're not just political cases.
That's different.
I think this is one problem with the asylum seekers, and then we have the illegally staying people.
Labor market.
Labor migration, exactly. And there is a way through Slovakia, Poland. I remember that people with the Polish Schengen visas were working in the Czech Western Bolivian routes or something. I remember that was initially a year ago or something. We also have, speaking of which, you were also telling that the Ukrainians go to other embassies to apply for the visa. We have quite a lot of cases when our visas are cancelled by immigration authorities, well, let's say in Germany or Austria, because these cases need to be reported to us, and we report them to our immigration authorities. So these are the visas that are issued by the Czech consulate, are misused in other countries. Mostly in Germany and Austria, there are no cases that I know of from further countries, but there are cases like this, and we have them not in thousands, not in hundreds, but a couple of tens.
Yes, we have some people approached us to help them because, on their opinion, they were mistreated in Germany, in most cases in Germany, when they use multiple entry visas issued by other member states. And they were stopped in Germany and some were deported or annulled visas. And the problem is there is no one uniform rules of how to use these multiple entry visas, especially when the person...
That is one, yes.
Yes, especially when the persons get this visa for certain purposes, but multiple entry visa means that you may use it also for other purposes. And so there was no one interpretation of that. Finally, we got official German explanation of this, but this is a German one. So there is no
I remember
one...
this question was raised with the legal service, which is the service of the Commission that should be explaining the provisions of the visa law and of the handling. But I'm afraid we have not received an answer yet, and this has been 2 more weeks. One of the basic things was that the Schengen visa is not purpose-bound. So once you have multiple Schengen, you can use it to travel to the first time as a tourist to Czech Republic, then as a tourist to Spain, or then you can have a business trip in, I don't know, Germany. Of course, it's up to you to explain why do you have that visa issued by that, and why do you intend to travel like this, or what are you doing at the airport in Madrid when you have a Czech visa?
Yes, there's one.
But I have to say that this, unfortunately, this practice is not harmonized within the Schengen.
So you can answer.
On remarks that I think is 2 years ago was officially Czech Ukrainian minority is most biggest minority in the Czech Republic. And maybe there's some reasons for the connection with other Ukrainians which live in Ukraine for some contacts. It is maybe a reason for these programs also. There is actually 140,000 Ukrainians as a legal citizens in the Czech Republic.
And what's the estimated number of illegal? Just sort of between 50 and 100,000?
The situation has changed significantly since 2009, not just with the Ukrainians, also with Vietnamese and others, because of the economic changes. So I presume that the number of illegal staying people is decreasing. But
even a minimum?
Well, when Jeff asked me on the panel, he also wanted to comment on the different policy of the Czech Republic compared, let's say, to other Visegrad countries. And I see two reasons why the approach to migration control through visa policy would be different. Poland and Slovakia have border control as another barrier. And secondly, we are not a destination country for settlement. Paradoxically, we have hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians arriving each year, but only around 3,000 settle every year. So it's actually much below our expectations. Actually, that's why, for instance, also there's the tradition of the Polish consuls working independently of police or border guards, whereas the Czech consuls are part of this kind of policing, system in which you are the first barrier. And so the decisions that the Polish consuls make are on a much broader set of criteria. For instance, economic interest, local situation, and so on. So they go much beyond just the.
Do you think so?
That's what we saw, and also from the discussion with MFA, that they also have the final say is always with the consul. I mean, that's his personal decision ultimately. And that's why, for instance, we have a much higher number of people being rejected on the border in Poland. Actually, Ukrainians are the top nationality, I think 30,000 a year, which are rejected, which is still just 5% of the visas issued, but it's still high percentage of refusal because you don't have this close coordination at the point of issue.
Of course, I think having an external Schengen border changing things significantly. We have just the external border point at basically Prague International.
Yeah, and a huge border guard service.
Yeah, but I think you're right. There are not so many people rejected.
So we are arguing that Poland is kind of getting undeservedly this kind of liberal image when it's one of the top countries rejecting on the borders. So the border guards are actually the bad guys, yes? Then the visa people can be the good guys. But it works in tandem, and that's why Poland is actually a good behaving Schengen member, which is controlling, and Germany has no problem with Poland controlling the border, in fact.
That's interesting.
By the way, in terms of crossing border in the airports, I would say that crossing border in German and Austrian airports is easier because they do not ask almost anything. So they are strong teachers, but they are more liberal in terms of their own policy.
We are doing a good job.
Yeah. Yes, but when you cross in Czech Republic, in Prague airport or in Warsaw airport, there are much more questions.
They are not protected entry. They are not in on the entry systems. I don't know how the border checks go, but I know that there's not a high number of Ukrainian citizens among the low number that is targeting the entry.
The problem is often when a lot of people use intermediary agencies, and intermediary agency, for instance, gives a certain purpose of travel, and this person is not aware of this purpose of travel and gives the wrong one. And the border guard rejects exactly this. I think 60% of all the refusals is on people give the wrong.
But don't you think that one should know why is he coming?
It's business, so.
No, that problems usually appears at the next application for visa.
Yeah.
But when the person applies next time and somebody sees that he was a driver of cargo and now he is a teacher of history, so it looks like strange. Yes, and that was a mechanism how these manipulations are detected usually. Yeah.
Yes, even I have a question to you about visa procedure. According to the statistic data, Czech consulates have a small refusal rate now. It's a good feature, but applicants who got refusal say that the appeal mechanism is very, very difficult for them, expensive and time-consuming. Do you know
What is
what?
expensive on the appeal procedures? because it costs zero.
No, it means
And if they pay any fee, just let us know because
Okay,
they
I
pay some
explain.
intermediary.
I explain. Our applicants say that to reach the positive answer, they must give the assistance from a lawyer, for example. Yes, they say
That, well, that must be
That is
the
why
basis.
I
If
like
yes,
to-
if you know about some of them, just you have to let us know, all the consulates know. Because all the people who were rejected the visa received that standard check at home with the information on how to appeal. That they have to send the appeal to the consulate stating why, because they have a reason for the refusal, and they need to state why they think it's not the good decision. And it doesn't need to be notarized, it doesn't need to be even translated into Czech. It's okay if they write it in Russian or English. I'm not sure if Ukrainian is good, but Russian, it needs to be written in a language that the consulate understands. And that's basically it. They need to just submit it within the period of time, which is 15 days from the receiving the paper. And then it is processed. There is no fee for the appeal procedures, and there is no need to go to the court or whatever. And I think we have the whole procedures can take according to the Czech law, because this is the national, not the Schengen rule, but the national rules, up to 30 days. Compared to, for example, Germany or the Nordics, they have these like months or even years taking long procedures. So this must be a particular issue that I cannot comment on, but basically the appeal procedure as such is not that difficult for the
I'm sorry if I get comment, because actually we faced a number of stories from Ukrainians, in particular from students, and for instance, like students who want to study in the Czech Republic, and they got to the university, they were accepted, but then when they applied for the visa, and they were refused, and they used this appeal mechanism, because I personally revised all the documents. So that was we told, which it is really interesting, because the person I talked to paid for notarization. Then he was waiting for, he appealed to Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Czech Republic. He was waiting for a reply like 1 year.
No, sorry. I was talking about the Schengen. I was talking about the Schengen appeal.
Yes.
This what you are talking about when a student wants to come and study for longer in the United States. That is a case of long-term visa or long-term residence permit.
It relates to national.
Yes, it relates. But even though the procedure is the same, it's one of the provisions of the immigration law or the law of state of foreigners in the Czech Republic. And I know that unfortunately this is nothing my colleague can comment on, because it's an issue of a different department, because they have the huge commission that is deciding on this. And I know that they were flooded with the bills. So were we at the beginning, because of course when we introduced this procedure, which was a year ago, at the beginning of 2011, 12, so more than a year ago, we had lots and lots of applicants, because all of them appealed. Even though that there were, and I'm not talking just about the Ukrainians, all of them agreed because they had the right, but then they realized that if the visa or the application was rejected for obvious reasons, like they had not. If not, they can, of course, then, no, I'm going to say that the number of appeals decreased again, and now we are in a standard rate, we can cope with this. With the long-term visa and long-term residence permits, it's a bit, I mean, they're not just getting the processing times according to law, unfortunately, because they have lots of them. This is the problem of
persons
long-term,
that
yes.
re-appeal for 2 times because they were trying to get in again to the university, which is really hard. I don't know what to tell to those people because they ask us and we're like, appeal again, they appeal, they are waiting, I don't know, like 4 or 5 months, and then they put a lot of forces to get
That's the Ministry of Interior. Our procedure is a little bit simpler in a way that we are following the EU regulations and not the national administrative code, which is applied in case of the voluntary, so post-grad. And this is.
What to do in this case? What should we advise?
Well, we were discussing this with the Ministry of Interior because of what kind of issue. Oh yeah, because of the issue that we had the problem that before the visa or the appeal was decided, the documents were not valid any longer. Yes, so that's what we were discussing, and they were telling us that at this time they are going to manage this appeal within 2 months. So I don't know what period of time we are talking about. I'm sure, I'm aware of the fact that like 1 year ago it was really a problem because they needed to create a system for this. Well, let's hope now another season starts, another season for the student visa starts. Let's hope that not so many refusals there's going to be, and if, then there will be a faster procedure on the appeal. But I cannot speak in the stead of the Ministry of Interior.
Should we maybe?
Sorry, where are you from? Or can I give you any contact? Or?
Yeah,
okay,
it's
so
really great
then,
because sometimes we need for some clarifications also because to be sincere, we do not know what to tell like to our applicant, and there are a lot of this kind of applicants. They are writing to us and explaining those stories, and we are trying to find out real reasons and to understand. But up until now, it's really difficult to understand why. Wait a couple of months to go here to review and the same story.
So maybe
I'd just like to invite other audience members here if you have comments or questions. I can see quite a few big political issues which have come up which we haven't addressed, but I don't want people to feel that they can't chip in and contribute. So if anybody would like to ask questions or comments.
Can I have one more question? Sorry. I was just looking at these cases. Do you have any particular problems with, and I don't want to avoid the standard applicants, with people like that and issuing visas at the Czech space? Because we are trying to build a framework of the Eastern Partnership to ease it as much or to facilitate as much as we can. But I didn't find any of those. Check if there is some which consulate issued or refused.
I will respond to yes.
My answer, yes, we have this issue, but they didn't want to publish their story because they fear some punishment, something like that. Yes, there are some people. But honestly speaking, this presentation includes people who were refused from during such career period of time, and that period there are no some significant stories from refusals from the Czech consulates.
I understand that it might be a satisfaction, but if they want us to have a closer look, of course.
Then?
Yes.
I have a comment first and a question. Just asked to be a discussion about the long-term visas and residence permits, and that's actually while you're focusing on Schengen visas, but I mean this is probably the biggest debate and criticism that has been here. It has regarded a system called Visa Fund, which sets quotas for long-term visas and residence permits at the Czech consulates if you want to apply, and it sets a certain number of quotas which are also secret, and and this has been criticized by the Ombudsman and non-government organizations. So just to, I think this should be added to the discussion here. And I have a question to you. I would be interested in where do you go now? I mean, what is your future strategy? Because I have been vaguely following the initiatives, following the visa monitoring and your coalition. And so I would be interested, like, what do you think you have achieved so far in recent years? And also I see a certain problem in terms of that you're saying that you're actually not against migration control and controlling illegal migration, which in the end I think may be problematic. So I would like to know if you have been discussing these issues among yourselves. And then maybe the answer was suggested already by Piotr who was talking about the delinking of migration control and visa issuing. So in this relation, I would like to ask the representative of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs if politically you're interested in also going in supporting such a position that at the EU level.
Can you start? Yeah, you asked so many issues.
So you can think over and talk about the visa bill, just a short comment, is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah. We are aware of the fact that basically on this credit side because it limits the number of applicants, and it was introduced in 2009 during the economic crisis, so to say, when not just the Ukrainians but also a couple of other countries applicants were reduced in submitting the application for economic reasons. It was the Vietnamese, the Mongolians, the Ukrainians, the Mongolians, and one more. Okay, it goes through an annual revision. Among these applications were also students and family reunions, which were limited. Now the visa one is going to be open for the non-profitable purposes of stay, which is studies, family reunions, and stuff like that. One for the economic reasons, there's going to be the limitation according to the country's needs. This is not designed advisory for any case, but it's other things that we need research to.
I think there won't be quotas for these categories.
Well, there's going to be, I don't want to call it quotas, but according to the capacities of the consulates, we would do the search number that can be processed, that can be increased in the time of the days of peak seasons, and then lower down or reschedule it in different purposes of stay. This is not ongoing. Also based on the criticism of the Ombudsman. This is one of the problems, of course, we are facing quite significantly, and that is the lack of financial sources for our consulates. That, of course, the more people we have, the more visas we can process and the more quality we can offer. I'm sure you know how many people there are in the consulates in Kyiv and around the world, how many people we have in Moscow compared to other Schengen countries. But these are the challenges we are facing and we are trying to fight. So even this factor is rising.
Can I just briefly add, because we are in Warsaw also involved in MIPEX, which is the index of measures that EU member states are doing to integrate migrants, and as far as I know, Czech Republic is much higher than the countries in the neighborhood of this index. And one of the reasons is that because Czech Republic has done more in terms of national policy measures to attract specific groups of migrants, which is going beyond the minimum. You don't see this in the Baltic states, you don't see this in Poland or Slovakia or Hungary. For instance, quota going beyond just the minimum of the EU regulations, I think, at least from my point of view, I would support. As long as it's transparent and the migrants know what the criteria are and there is an appeal, whatever procedure, but...
Well, maybe just to add, the criticism of the Ombudsman was also started from the point that it is actually in contradiction with the EU legislation.
That's why we
and so in this sense, there may be a certain betterment in some areas can still be in conflict. Let's say if you increase the quota, it still is against the right to reunification with your family member. So I think there might still be a conflict going on, and so it is a different. It's not really in relation to legal. And also it's really not transparent, and there will only be efforts to legalize it. I think now.
Before panelists go back, I just want to add in a bigger political question, because Piotr, you mentioned that you felt that the Czech government wouldn't have a problem with visa-free relations with Russia. And also before, we spoke before, you were saying you thought there was an issue that Moldova has gone to the second part of the visa plan, the second action plan, and Ukraine is behind, and that it would be problematic for Ukraine if Moldova gets visa liberalization for, because this might create a migration issue in the EU. And I wanted to see what other participants, but also the panelists, felt about those two questions. Russia and delinking Moldova and Ukraine, or not? Because it would be a great disappointment for Moldova, I think, to be said, you've met the technical criteria, but you have to wait for Ukraine. Yeah.
So, let me start. So I have many questions, but let me just start with your one. That's really, there are lots of the portions of sensitivity in the entire process of visa liberalization. And definitely there will be a point where we may say that something is unfair, something is double standard, and something is not good. So definitely this will appear at some point. Because, first of all, there are different kind of tracks between EU and Eastern Partnership countries on one hand, EU and Russia on the other hand, and also EU and Turkey, plus Kosovo. The third one. So there are three, they are similar, but they are not the same. And there are a lot, for sure, all these processes are some way interconnected, and people are watching. We are just trying to provide some comparative assessment. And we understand that there will be no one solution for everybody. However, there should be some solution for everybody which meets the final objective. Definitely, for our sensitivity in Ukraine, as well as in Turkey, for example, who just recently got this decision on the roadmap vis-à-vis travel. For them and for us, it is sensitive that the EU does not require from Russia the same as it requires from us. In terms of the almost all elements of visa liberalization process, including what is the most sensitive, the human rights block. For example, in our country, which is on obvious reason, it is not easy to promote reforms, for example, in terms of meeting on all the requirements of the minorities. For example, any reforms of the to give sexual minorities rights similar to that they have in somewhere in Germany. It's sensitive. It's patriarchal old society which is not, I would say, welcoming this. But okay, that may be managed. But what is really bad, that the same reforms are not required from Russia. And some people say in Ukraine and in Turkey, why we are required so deep, so sensitive reforms if Russia is not required. Yes, there is something which is which can hardly be explained to the society. For me, it's clear. I can explain it, definitely. Every one of you can explain why it happens. But for the media, for this wider society, it looks like double standards. And people don't like it clearly. For example, we have a big debate now on anti-discrimination law, which would be a huge step ahead for our country. But one of the reasons, argument against this law is that Russia is not required to do the same within the visa liberalization process. So there is no one simple answer on that. And definitely there will be the same when the decision is approaching. For example, one day there will be a decision on the table or the draft decision on visa liberalization. And definitely there will be a lot of the perceptions which will contribute to the final decision. And definitely, for example, in terms of Ukraine, the problems of its human rights, the problems with democracy will be much higher obstacles, will create much higher obstacles and even deeper problems with the same issues in Russia. And there will be again points to say that some double standards, etc. Today, that's very useful. For example, for my country, it's a very useful thing that the EU gives us this carrot, which is visa-free travel, in the end, in return for certain reforms. It's brilliant, but it would not be so brilliant if there will be double standards. Because at any point there will be this criticism that we are in the more, there are somebody in more privileged position. So for sure in the case of Balkan states, that was easier for them. Because for them there was genuinely the same set of criteria for every Western Balkan country. In the Eastern Europe it is not the same. There is one approach to Turkey, there is another approach to Russia, and there is a third approach to the Eastern Partnership countries. And definitely, for sure, at a certain point there will be a solution. I would be in favor of granting visa-free travel at the same day for all these countries, but practically it is not possible. But what is possible? And how to avoid this sensitivity, or at least to diminish this feeling of frustration of somebody who will definitely be frustrated at a certain point. But there is a very specific political issue which will require political wisdom and political certain solution. So at the moment maybe there will be some more ideas how to do it, because at the moment there is still not an issue. Why? Because we still have this process based on the technical criteria. Today we may say that everything depends on the technical criteria. But one day after, when we'll be at the position that the technical criteria are mostly fulfilled, there will be a time for the political issues.
But Oleksandr, if I may add, because what I was also saying is that in the countries that at the time of formation of Eastern Partnership were very strongly in favor of linking human rights and visa issues, I think this support is diminishing. I think it's the case of Poland, it's the case of Germany, maybe even the case of the Nordic countries, where we are, let's put it, becoming more realpolitik oriented. Yes, that there are benefits, and that maybe it's the other way around. You let people come, and this puts pressure on the government. Because frankly, in Poland, I mean, we are having this kind of, sinusoid with the Putin government, and basically for Poland and for Germany, the question is, how to open up markets, how to open up people-to-people contact, and then we'll see what happens. Because the other way around didn't work. And my impression from what I hear from the members of the European Parliament, also there is this question of revision of Eastern Partnership. That there is a bit of frustration over Belarus, for instance. Why can it participate in this visa liberalization when it's such an important country, a transit country? So I think we have a number of axes coming together to this solution. And actually, when we published this delinking piece, half a year ago, I think it was considered a bit mad, a bit outlandish. But not so much anymore, frankly enough. You know, that this idea is slowly coming. But we don't want to say we should give up on human rights. We are saying that actually this carrot comes first. Basically, the society is putting pressure, but the society inside the country.
But you're arguing more that the carrot should be de-linked from visa-free travel.
Yes.
But the question then is, can you see Belgium, Netherlands coming round to that position? And will it take a debate in the EU on EU-Russia visa relations for that to actually change? Because the demotivating impact could be so large on the other countries.
Frankly, I feel that this event needs to be repeated in The Hague, in Copenhagen and so on. I mean, and also by the Ukrainian government, because I feel that especially smaller countries in the EU, when we did interviews over how the delegations of some countries, and that was actually France, how they were feeling about the Western Balkans process. And they said, we felt that we were no longer at the table, that the Commission basically was closing this deal, and we need as member states to influence this. And actually, I think, paradoxically, the foreign ministries are feeling, and interior ministries are feeling much more accountable to the societies. That is, you know, for the British, for instance, public, or for the Belgian public, the issue of migration is becoming an internal issue. So, for instance, Cameron may no longer just invite Romanians like Tony Blair invited Poles, just, you know, by a sleight of hand. So I'm saying that now, you know, the governments of Moldova or Ukraine must lobby in the capitals, not just in Brussels. And I feel that basically capitals were left out. That was also the problem. And so I think we are just doing, that was the answer to this. We are starting to go to the capitals as PASOS, not only to Brussels, because we feel we are too Brussels-centered. It's not going to work in Germany.
Yeah, so just to reach to your question, that we have a strategy which is multi-element, and our communication strategy in the member states includes these kind of dialogues and more open dialogues. Just a couple of days ago, colleagues of mine came from Brussels when they delivered to European Parliament, and that was more, I would say, public event with media. So in the European Parliament, it's also an issue. It's not just very simple to come and say that we don't need visa, just cancel them. No, we are explaining what's going on with our countries. We do not do it alone. I mean, that would not be, in our opinion, should not be presented as egoistic Ukrainian vision of things. It's rather we approach into the reasons to remove these barriers in Europe, including so we do not. So we try to have all on board. First of all, Moldavians and Georgians, Armenians and Azeris, and Belarus also, who are facing similar issues. We also have good communication with Turks and with these international organizations like European Stability Initiative, which has very good experience in the visa liberalization, especially for Balkans and Turkey. So then we are the source of expertise. For example, if somebody wants to get an information on the reforms related to visa liberalization in Ukraine from non-official sources, they approach to us and we explain them on the data protection, on the border management, on migration, what's going on the anti-discrimination, etc. So all these components are our fields of expertise. We have this regular update of what's going on. For example, just a few days ago, there were very good 2 laws adopted on data protection and on countering corruption, which would not likely be possible without this pressure of visa liberalization process. So that's very useful tool, and we use it in order to summarize. We have this data, what's going on, and we can deliver it to the member states and to the EU institutions Then for sure we continue our communication strategy. We are not alone. We are doing this. We have a coalition for visa-free Europe, which is more than 60 NGOs from many countries, EU member states and non-EU. We have experience, including with PASOS. We got independent assessment of the country readiness for visa liberalization process just recently. We are doing it very actively in the frames of the Civil Society Forum of Eastern Partnership. Just a few days ago, again, we discussed in the subgroup for visa liberalization, Iryna is the chair of that subgroup, how may we be a part of the process, policy process, including what you mentioned, changes to the visa code. So one of our proposals is how can we advise to the EU to change some provisions of visa code to be more, to reflect those shortcomings which we indicated during our monitorings. And we just finishing now the package of proposals to amend the visa code. So there are just a variety of actions, and definitely we welcome any participation in joining us for all these things. And what we are going next? We are going to come to Poland. Poland is maybe that's easy to come there. It's because there are a big audience and a lot of people ready to listen to. And for example, we can arrange this exhibition and discussion in the Polish Parliament, which would be not possible, for example, in the French or the Dutch Parliament, definitely. But this option is open. For sure, there is a lots of things which are not easily can be delivered. For example, yes, because the big sensitivity, sometimes people just consider that, you are coming because you are avoiding your homeworks in your country. You're coming to ask us to do something for you. But it is not as we think. Yeah? So we really try to combine this domestic work in order to deliver not just slogans, but the deliverables which are really added value in terms of reforms. I'm absolutely sure that today, visa liberalization process for the Eastern European countries, first of all Eastern Partnership countries, is the most viable instrument in the hands of the European Union for the reforms in different areas, from the border management to the human rights. Yes, it is an issue of discussion how much we should connect or disconnect finally when the decision should be taken. For sure, there should be not be it should not be a requirement level of accession to the EU. That's really lower requirements. But anyway, it's very important that we managed to consolidate and to provide some push input to reforms due to visa liberalization process. Thank you.
Just finally, I think it would be very interesting if you had a governmental positions reflecting, like the point of view Piotr made from Poland and Oleksandr from Ukraine, that we have to meet all these criteria, and from the EU saying, no, that's wrong. That you have to de-link it because of human rights and bringing people's contacts, and it would actually change the debate if the Polish or the perspective of Piotr was really widespread in the EU, because it would mean that both have the political will to meet somewhere in the middle ground, and I'm sure it would be a compromise.
But I think it's not an accident that PASOS, which is by the way located in Prague, has started this series of events from Czech Republic, because to my mind exactly what I call the so-called swing states, and I believe the Czech Republic is one of them, are crucial, because certainly there are clear opponents. And certainly there are clear proponents, but I think Czech Republic is sitting on the fence, and understandably so. I mean, you are a country which has no external borders. You are a country with very large non-resident population, and at the same time you are a country that treats very seriously this integration challenge. Yes, other countries just are letting go, the whole grey zone. and you are not. And I feel that such countries must be addressed. And also I believe that, paradoxically enough, while we will not be talking so much about technicalities, we will be talking about something much more divisive, about values. This issue is really about values. I think a lot of people, even in Poland, would be very uncomfortable if we just cut corners. And actually, the previous policy brief of PASOS was called "No Shortcuts on the Road to Visa-Free Travel," by the way. So I think that this message must be taken to Kiev, to Minsk, to Moscow. There are no shortcuts on some things. You know, the fact that we, for instance, don't want to make society hostage to the different meandering strategies of the government doesn't mean that EU will just let go. It will not. And I feel, I mean, what I'm however saying is that the experience of Kaliningrad is very interesting, because Kaliningrad is becoming one of the most liberal regions of Russia. It's the most exposed region. You were saying that 77% of Ukrainians haven't been to the EU. I mean, the problem was that I think half of the Kaliningrad residents don't have a foreign passport. And the fact that we introduced this deal, one of the requirements was that the Kaliningrad region must issue all the people who want to go a foreign passport. That was a revolution in Russia. I mean, it's never been done. And then other regions, you know, Tula or Kursk, can say, if Kaliningrad got it, why don't we? And I think this is also the issue.
Well, I think we should conclude with that. But people can, of course, talk individually, and there's still some strudel and other cakes left. So thanks very much to our guests, and thank you for participating. I'm particularly glad that we got the people from the ministry, which was very good. Thank you.
Thank you.